Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Debbie McKeegan, FESPA Textile Ambassador and the CEO of Texintel. As a brief introduction, I have spent my entire career in the textile industry, a journey that has taken me from analog through to digital production. And today, we welcome our expert panel to discuss apparel manufacturing. Our panel today represents various touch points of the fashion production workflow, from printing through to sew manufacturing, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to Alex Massal, the Global Sales Director of Liberty Limited, Kevin Van Lanker, founder of Sportswear of Tomorrow, Roberto Lucchini, the MD of Creazioni Digitali and Green Drop, and last but not least, Kirby Best of Kirby Best of I Create Fashion and BMC Bespoke Manufacturing Company. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Today we're going to discuss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you all. Great. Today we're going to discuss market challenges, opportunities, and the key drivers for change in the apparel industry. And we have a number of questions to ask you. But before we do so, I'd like to ask each of you to share a brief introduction of your companies. Could we first go over to Alex? Thank you.
Hi to everyone. We are Liberty Fabrics. We are part of Liberty Group. It's as most people know that it's for the iconic store in central London, and then Fabrics is the division where we belong, that we are manufacturing of, we try to say, the most iconic prints in the industry. We are a division present in worldwide with offices around the world, and then the designing is done with 20 people in London, in central London, and then we have our own factory where we are vertical. It's located in Como. Happy to be here.
Lovely to have you with us. It really is a pleasure. Kevin, can I ask you to introduce your company and services, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at FESPA again. Our company started 20 years ago making sportswear. Originally, I'm from Belgium, but I moved to Eastern Europe 10 years ago to take control of production, as working to subcontractors can be challenging. Originally, we started as a brand, but today we serve more than 300 brands worldwide with mainly sportswear production. We do the A to Z from design, print, cut, and sew, everything based in Romania, Eastern Europe.
Thank you. Thank you. Kirby, could you introduce your company, please?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm now head of a new company called I Create Fashion, and we're a comprehensive platform where industry brands come to design, store, develop, and share their creations. It's a new platform that is really driving information into these new factories that can accept digital information much more easily.
It's great. Thank you so much. And Roberto, last but not least, could you introduce Creazioni Digitali, please?
Okay, good morning. Good morning.
Creazioni Digitali is a digital printer company located in Como, which works on commissions. We started with the digital printing with supermarket inks, but during the years, we focused on other printing sustainable methods, such as digital printing with pigment inks that we called green drops. You know that with this method of printing, the water consumption is very limited, and we think that this is the future.
Most definitely. Thank you. That's great. Okay, let's crack on then. Let's get straight into our first question. And Roberto, we'll stay with you, if that's okay. Oops, switching over.
Okay.
Roberto, let's go back. Roberto, what challenges and new opportunities did the COVID-19 pandemic present to your business?
Allora, the pandemic has helped to raise awareness about the need to be more protective towards the conservation of your planet and Therefore, many customers have began to ask for more sustainability printing. Sorry for my English, I don't speak English very well. So, and
Your English is
the
much
mask,
better than my Italian. Thank you. Thank you.
the mask,
Grazie.
That's great. Thank you so much for that intro. Alex, could you answer the same question, please? What challenges and new opportunities did the pandemic present to Liberty Limited?
Well, obviously, was a very tough year in terms of supply chain. I have to say that the biggest one for everyone was to be able to confront the demand that we were having at that time, and then also to understand what's going to happen. Because in February, we were thinking that the world was ending for our business, we have to say. And then in June, we saw that the things were not going to be as bad as we were planning for what is our sourcing part. The reality is that in the supply chain we suffer a lot. Many of our suppliers were closing. Even ourselves, our factory in Como area they were suffering a lot, as everyone knew. In Italy was a big hit, so it was very difficult to run a plant where you were not knowing if the day after you were going to be able to open, or you have to close because the illness was going to hit any of our employees, and then for security you have to close. So I have to say that this was very challenging, but then also this showed us the opportunity of how we learn to manage a business through these kind of platforms like Teams and Zooms and everything. That we have 1,000 brands worldwide, where we were, all of us, our sales team of more than 70 people, was normalized to visit. And then I was traveling 70% of my time, and now I have been 1 year and a half sitting at home. So this is the first thing that you learn, and the world has not ended. We are all of us here, and then the business keeps going on. So I think that this has been a good lesson for all of us, that sometimes we think that if we are not there, the things are not happening. So this gives a little bit of sight long term about how the things can be done without being present.
Great. Thank you. Great answer. Kevin, could you answer the same question, please? How has COVID disrupted your business, or has it disrupted your business?
Well, I think I 400% agree with Alex. In January 2020, we didn't know what was going to happen, because in Asia, COVID started. So many many brands who had factories in Asia were contacting us to quickly move over their production to Europe, because here the factories were still open. So we started accepting orders, but in February, March, we went in complete lockdown. So we had to also cancel those orders. And then we didn't do anything for 3 months. And then suddenly everything picked up around June, July, August. And right now we are fully booked. Like, we cannot follow the demand of brands willing to return to Europe, feeling safer in Europe with their production. Supply chain is easier in Europe. And people maybe also blame China for playing a role in the COVID breakout. So they are like, okay, taking distance from Asia and asking us to help with our production locally.
Great. Glad to hear that. Fantastic, Kevin. Kirby, over to you.
Great. Well, answering the same question, there were two things that happened. We, at On Point Manufacturing, pivoted very quickly from, I think we got the notice on Thursday that people asked us if we would move into PPE production. And by Saturday morning, we were in full production, and we produced, I think, about 1 million masks, all sewn masks. And then we moved into level 3 gown production, and we produced, I think, about 250,000 level 3 gowns. And that saved, people said, about 8 million of the disposable gowns. So it was a really interesting exercise that we learned so much about how fast we could pivot a company. The second thing that we watched as the transition through the COVID era we watched the rise of digitally native brands where so many people were stuck at home and they were starting to develop their own products. And we quickly moved into that. Unfortunately, in the end, it wasn't COVID that shut down On Point Manufacturing. It was the death of our biggest financial backer and a very good friend of ours. And so it was a sad day to close it, but we just decided that this experiment was so successful and we learned so much about what could happen with one-off manufacturing and personalized products that we decided to go back into it again, this time a lot smarter, a lot faster, and with much more structured data feeding the factories. So it was a very painful experience, but we came out of the other side a lot stronger and really excited about the future.
Oh, that's great news, isn't it, Kirby? That's great. Fantastic. Yeah. Really glad to hear that. Kirby, let's stay with you then. Has the supply chain been disrupted at all? And how have you adapted to protect your business post-pandemic? So you'll have learned lots of lessons from your recent experience. How do you plan ahead? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the supply chain has been dramatically affected and will never go back to the way it was. Certainly in the United States, all of the major brands are rethinking their supply chain and trying to figure out better, smarter, faster ways to react to the consumer demands. And I listened in to a Goldman Sachs presentation. And one of the things that was the most exciting was they were talking about the purchase of materialistic goods was probably not going to grow as fast as people thought, but most people would get into travel and to entertainment and outside activities, which would drag along the whole fashion industry with it. So we were really pleased, and I think that as horrible it was to go through this, I think we'll all come out a lot stronger and better at the other end.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Kevin, how's everything affected your supply chain?
I think we are very lucky to have only European suppliers. Apart from them having production issues for a little while, right now we can get stock in 4 to 5 weeks. And most of the fabrics we daily use, they're on stock. So we are very lucky. And from that side, we don't see any issues at this moment, no.
It's great to hear you're already local, aren't you? You're already near shore. Which, yeah,
that's the
so you were at the beginning.
Yes, so many brands
you were
come
already.
Back to you. Exactly.
Yes, you were already there. That's a fantastic story. Roberto, could I ask you the same question, please? How has your supply chain been disrupted, and how have you adapted to protect the business post-pandemic?
We were likely. In fact, our most important suppliers of inks and transfer papers are Italian and European one, and therefore we didn't have big problems of supplying the materials. Besides this aspect, we consider our suppliers as partners, and therefore we establish good relationships with them. And this helps us to develop with them to carry out projects and such as a green drop, in which we believe very much.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Good to hear. And Alex, last but not least, could I ask you the same question? How did the pandemic affect your supply chain?
Well, I think that I'm in the same path than my colleagues here. So it's true that we had to adapt, but we were not very dramatically hit. So as I was saying earlier, was more in our case our own factory in terms of if we were going to be able to work or not. But in terms of supply, it's true that for an example, we are suffering it today. So today, India is the one that is having a lot of issues, and then we as producers on cotton and printers on cotton, we source cotton from India, and then is where we have now the disruption. However, this is good because it comes after 1 year that we have been doing the homeworks, and we were well prepared, I have to say, but it's always good as you were when you are asking at how you get better. So sometimes needs to happen these kind of things for you to get better. It's a very hard lesson, I have to say, but it's good because always reminds you that you can never give things for granted. You always need to look at all your supply chain, stock levels, and everything, and sourcing to be able to confront these kind of challenges. So positive at the end of the day, I have to say.
That's good to hear. Very, very good to hear. Alex, let's stay with you then and move on to the next question. As an international company, is reshoring happening, and is the fashion industry committed to change?
From my point of view, and our point of view in terms of Liberty Fabrics, what we see is that if we talk about the last 15 months, we have seen that people has moved very fast to source local, and then they change their supply chain to source more locally to avoid all this. Today there is still a lot of issues in goods transport and goods shipping by air, by boat. It's 3 times the price, and then also the timings, and then they have a lot of issues that brands are facing. So what we see is that, for example, in Europe, they have moved all the production, not all, but most of it, the critical part, to Europe. But funny or not, you see that now that the things get where they were being, they start to move it again to Far East. At the end of the day, it's true that the cost is there, and then manufacturing is big part of the cost of one garment in the fashion industry. So they need to be careful with their cost, and they move their hubs depending on the cost. So China was too expensive, now it's Vietnam, and then if not, it's Ethiopia. So you see that people for cost moves a lot, but then also I think that it's coming a big wave of sourcing local with more quality goods and more reliable partners.
Yeah. Is there a break even there, Alex, on meterage? When you say moving out to the Far East, what kind of meterages are they calling from the Far East?
Well, what tends to happen is that when you source local, or at least from our side in the Italian environment, you see that the quantities are smaller than when they play in Far East. However, it's true that the industry is changing, and then also the Far East companies are accepting smaller orders. However, it's not profitable for them to do small quantities. The same that for the companies, it's much better to produce small quantities locally because it's cheaper to transport also. So it's a little bit of the balance. So they use it also in terms of pricing on qualities to buy the most expensive goods in Europe, and then the most commodity and normal goods in Far East.
That's great. Thank you for your answers. Kirby, can we go over to you for this question too? Is reshoring happening? I know this is one of your very favorite topics.
It is, for sure. I'm watching the United States absolutely split with the very traditional and older brands struggling with understanding this new model. And they get stuck on 2 things. The first thing they get stuck on is understanding the labor cost, and they refuse to look at the new model because they go, you will never beat offshore labor prices. And they're absolutely correct on that. The second thing that they're having trouble struggling with understanding is that manufacturing isn't going to save enough money even in the best manufacturing facilities. However, it allows the model to be changed, and the model changes from mass producing garments to rifle focusing in on what the consumer wants, with made to measure, very specific, multitude of sizes, because of course the order quantity is 1, so we can do any size. So we're watching a split from the old traditional brands that are struggling with it, and they will get it. We watched this happen in the book industry, where the large book publishers just did not understand one-off book manufacturing, and today they embrace it wholeheartedly. We're watching the same transition through this in the United States. keep in mind that we don't have the infrastructure anymore. We lost it during the NAFTA days, and so much of our manufacturing went offshore that now trying to build it is very tough because there's not a lot of the big equity firms that are willing to put into U.S. made manufacturing. However, that said, there's a whole generation that is pushing this and pushing green and pushing where it should all go, which is really rewarding to see. So I have a very positive outlook on how this is going to transition, and I believe that we're at that tipping point or almost past that tipping point.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
That's great. Thank you, Kirby. Thank you for sharing your insights. Roberto, could I ask you the same question, please? Is reshoring happening, and does the fashion industry have an appetite for change?
So we wanted to focus two different aspects. From one side, the fashion industry is pushing the sustainable aspect, absolutely. On the other hand, they promised during the pandemic period to protect the supply chain, but not. But sometimes this didn't happen. They have taken very questionable decisions about the changing the supply chain for many reasons, such as prices or something like that. They are not protecting at all the supply chain.
That's interesting. Interesting to hear that, and I guess that comes down to price pointing as well, doesn't it? It's come down to price per square meter and not looking at the total cost of ownership.
Yes, two different aspects that should be considered together, but price is as always more important than sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. The fashion industry still really have to rethink their margins and their costing system, don't they? If we really are going to make a huge sustainable change and a huge march towards a greener future here. Kevin, last but not least, can I ask you the same question? I think you're probably the perfect example of nearshoring, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think that our company for many years focused on manufacturing smaller quantities for brands, and some of the brands have ignored this part for a long time because they thought that making 50 pieces or 500 pieces wouldn't be interesting for them. Now they see that to recover also from this financial crisis or the financial crisis definitely will come, but the COVID crisis, they are looking for more flexible production. It's something we really offer to customers, so we can offer them even a single piece production. I think we will come back to that a little bit later also in this presentation. So lots of brands looking for production in Europe. I think most of us and our colleagues are totally overbooked with orders for the rest of the year. We don't even accept new clients for the rest of the year normally. So it's really, there is a very big demand for manufacturing in Europe. And with regards to sustainability, the shipping costs, as I heard, for containers are skyrocketing after this crisis. So many of the brands are very scared where this is to. So if the shipping cost continues to rise, then I think more and more brands will be forced to look at production closer to Europe, because continuing to pay $20,000, if that ever happens, for a container is not sustainable for them at all.
No, absolutely not. And it's very difficult to get that the costing's accurate, isn't it? As when prices are fluctuating so much, it's not easy at all. Okay, thank you so much, Kevin. Kevin, perhaps we'll stay with you actually. How big a problem is sewing and finding the staff with the correct skill sets for you in your area?
Well, exactly because of the pandemic and the growth demand for manufacturing here, I definitely think it's a challenge. We had a factory for 10 years in Latvia first, and I moved away from there because it became a challenge to find sewing ladies. But it's not only sewing. We need also people to work on the digital files and so on. So finding staff for any business, not only for ours, is difficult, but not so many people to be found to work a sewing machine. I don't know what is the future going to look like in this. I know that some of the brands are spreading their manufacturing over all of Eastern Europe and also exploring countries they wouldn't have worked in before, like Albania or Macedonia. I don't work with this kind of countries because I'm not familiar with it. I prefer to be based in Romania, where you don't have any import duties, etc. if you ship from here to Europe. With regards to labor, we will see where the things go. At this moment, we are not complaining. We have the staff available right now for the demand what we have. It's also possible because we pay higher wages than most of the factories here. So from there, maybe the fact it's not so difficult for us to find sewing people.
Do you have your own in-house training as well, Kevin? Your training staff?
When people are getting on board, yeah, we have an engineer who is teaching them how to sew certain products, because most of the sportswear products we produce for the A-level brands aren't so easy. They maybe look easy, but they have lots of detail that people need to pay attention to. And the demand from the brands, okay, for years they have produced maybe in Asia, and nobody can say that Asia makes a shitty product. Sorry for the words. It's definitely not. I think they make very nice product. If you go to Decathlon, the product quality is really nice. So we have to attain the same quality here in Europe without being
it has to be.
expensive. Yeah, because I mean, this the last part also is very important.
Yeah, it is. It is. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights, Kevin. Kirby, can I ask you the same question? You'll have an interesting perspective on this one.
I do. Yes, we had a lot of trouble hiring great staff in Alabama. And so we have moved out to Phoenix, Arizona. And there is a very large Hispanic base here, and they're very well trained sewers. We love to tell the story of, we have a friend out here, Arizona Fashion Source, and she hired 70 sewers, of which 70 people were perfect. And we hired 10 sewers in the same time, and 9 of them we had to let go. So watching it, there are pockets in the United States that are you can hire some fabulous sewers, but there are other pockets that we have a lot of trouble with. So yes, it's a big issue. And yes, we are with BMC, we're investing a trainer for every 33 people and a full-time trainer to train the trainers. So yeah, big issue.
You have a trainer to train the trainers. That's great. So
yes.
You're speeding up the whole program then, so that you can scale as your business grows without having those labor problems. It's great.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Brilliant. Roberto, do you have anything to add on this question? I know that Alex doesn't sew. He's printing and manufacturing. Do you want to add anything to this question?
Frankly speaking, no, because as a service company, we don't meet this problem absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Alex, I'm right. You're fine to skip this question. Is that correct?
Yes. Just to say that from outside view, I agree totally with what Kevin was saying. So at the end of the day, you do see that this is the culture who brings the skills to different countries. And it's funny or not, is how you see it around the world. That some countries winning and stays, and some others they are losing the power of manufacturing and sewing.
Yeah, and the balance is shifting and changing. Kirby, can I just come back to you quickly on that? Because there's a little bit of the question I missed off. How do you think robotics are going to help, and how far away do you think we are from robotic manufacturing?
So let me break that down into 2 categories. The actual sewing robotics, I think they're a long way off. We're watching with great excitement on what some people are doing, and we watched the Sewbot group, change where they were moving the sewing machine around the product. And I think thinking like that's going to be very exciting. However, I don't know whether we're going to see anything in my generation that is successful in sewing a complete garment, unless it's knitting. Of course, those machines are doing incredibly well. But As for everything else in the plant, robotics will take over everything. If you see the video of our new plant, it's everything's moved by robotics. Everything's organized by software. Every piece that moves is driven by software and automation. So,
great. Thank you so much for your answers there. Kevin, we're going to come back to you for the next question because you're an absolute expert in this. How have you adapted your business to meet the growing demand for customization? And do you use or plan to invest in workflow automation?
Yeah, indeed, it's typically a real subject for us. So for 20 years, we've been making customized sportswear. And in the beginning, I saw my graphic designers clicking and clicking to make print files before it could go to be printed. And it really made every brain cell in my head pop because I thought this must be done automatically. So yeah, we worked together with Adobe on automating making print files. So that's done. It's working. Now the next step would be to automate the rest of the production for enough customized sportswear. So the idea is to launch the software finally this year. The plan was to launch it last year, but because of the COVID, we postponed it, where people could design their own individualized designed sportswear, and we produce one single piece and get it out of the factory in 3 days. So I think this is going to really disrupt the market. We are not going to sell directly to C. We would give this platform to our customers so that they could integrate it in their website. And basically, with that, we are disrupting immediately the industry in sportswear in Europe. We are not talking about other countries yet. Let's focus on Europe. We will give this system to all of our customers, which we have now. So imagine if 300 brands are allowing for whatever sportswear they have on their website to be customized with their print, with their colors, with a zip pocket there and there. I think this is really renewing, and we've been working on it for 6 years. So it quite some time to launch it, but we are super, super excited about this. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Alex, can I ask you the same question then as a printing manufacturer? How have you invested in workflow automation and process control? Do you see that becoming a bigger and bigger investment as time goes on?
Yes, we have seen that in the last years, our customization of what customers ask us has increased. Up today, this is a good point because actually we were discussing it during last month in terms of many areas in the business about what we have to do. Today, it's 40% of our business already comes from customized solutions for customers. And we see it in two areas in our case, that it's one, and is the most important, is in design, where people ask for kind of adaptation of the collections that we create for their markets or for their brands. And then as a result of that, we had to increase our design team, because obviously one thing is to create a collection that you sell, and then another one is to readapt that collection for different brands at different seasons. So we have to grow our business team in this case. And then another one is making more flexible our manufacturing. What we see is that people tend to specialize. They want to be different in the market, and then for this reason, they move smaller productions in more repeating times. So it's getting, I think that some years ago was a kind of not very common to have one collection per month. And today we have been hearing this for many brands around the world, that their goal is to launch one collection or every month or every quarter at least. So go much faster than the seasons to make more variety in the market. So this obviously, as a result, we have to adapt also our manufacturing to be more flexible and to be faster in the market.
Very interesting to hear it. It's also interesting to hear how the opportunities for creatives right at the very beginning of the supply chain are changing too, because to create the design diversity, we have to be generating more and more and more content, don't we? Seem to be generating more content wherever we are in the world, and hopefully we'll generate less stock and more content as we move along, and less waste. So let's see if we can all become much more efficient. Roberto, could I ask you the same question, please? How much are you having to move forward and look at software and workflow automation to cope with
It's
customized manufacturing?
a very interesting question, because we are implementing the workflow as the speed in delivery can make the difference between getting or not getting orders, and therefore it's 100% important to have a good, very speed workflow. We are working on it very hardly.
Thank you. It's a very interesting answer, actually. It's interesting, isn't it, how quickly you now have to respond to inquiries and produce and manufacture them. Thank you. Kirby, last but not least, can we come back to you on this question then? Because again, favorite topic for you, workflow automation and software.
Yeah, so we'll probably invest about $12 million into automation this year. And what I think really struck me over the last few years was the diversity, not in a good way, that we were receiving content from our customers. And so creating a linear path of structured data was so important to us. And what we can do with that data, we're really just hitting the tip of the iceberg. So I'm so excited about where this is all going. And we're having some great response to the designers that are going into iCreate, and we've made it as intuitive as possible, and we're going to merge with another firm that will bring in 150 different videos that will add instructions to each stage, and they can see it on video if they don't understand it. But it's pretty simple. I entered a dress tonight, and so I know the system works pretty well. So it's exciting where it's going.
It's so exciting, isn't it? But it's also the speed of innovation is actually unheard of. I mean, the acceleration that we're now seeing, and I'm absolutely convinced it's to do with COVID and the pandemic and how it's just forced us all to adapt at warp speed. Really, it really is quite incredible. Kevin, can I come over to you for the next question? E-commerce obviously is a huge growing sector of your business. How do you plan to invest to move forward for fulfillment or deeper integration with your supply chain? I'm kind of looking at transparency here.
Okay. As I told you before, our company originally started in Latvia you have two very big players on print on demand. It's Printful and Printify. So we were challenged from the beginning to look into our factory and to see how do they do it with, for example, a custom printed cup, one-off, and shipped to the customer. So that brought us to the idea that in that platform, which we are now going to launch, customers, and then I mean brands, can also design their new collections, push them straight to their Shopify store, whatever they have, and customers can go straight ordering there in the online platform. And whenever they have an order, the order would come to us. We will fulfill it for the customer and drop ship to the customer. So one-off production is really around the corner now in sportswear. And I think we're really at the forefront of that, and it's super exciting.
Certainly is. Very, very exciting. Roberto, could I ask you the same question, please? Is e-commerce online fulfillment a growing sector for your business in order to get orders processed and delivered as quickly as possible? And do you think that you need deeper integration within the supply chain?
Sincerely, as a service company, the e-commerce doesn't work for us. So we know that the customers we are working with are developing this aspect, but not in our case. It's not important.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Even though we are thinking to create a special line for the future, but in this moment, we are not considering it at all.
You're not selling direct online. That's great. Thank you so much. Alex, could you answer the same question, please?
Work online service.
Okay. Alex, over to you.
Yes, from our side, we have in this case at Liberty, we have the online platform. So we were selling libertylondon.com, and then this is a very good teacher for us for Liberty Fabrics, because we see the demand in terms of fabrics, how the fabrics perform online. So, and this show us how we have to do things. And I think that the key fact is visibility. It means that more visibility that the supplier has in the sales of the customer, then more keen you will be to adapt your supplier sourcing or speed on manufacturing to commit with them. Then also, in another side, we have today that our most growing customers or number of customers, obviously it's not volume, but they are getting bigger, is the people that sells in online platforms like Instagram, WeChat, Taobao stores and all this. And then obviously is another speed, is another era, is another way of selling, of producing. And this is a good, I think it's a good heads up, and it's how the world is going to buy maybe in the future. I don't think that everything will be digital on e-commerce, but personally, but I think that it's going to be important to know what is going on e-commerce for all of us.
Yeah, so many different channels to manage all at the same time, aren't there? Thank you so much for your answers there. That's absolutely great. Alex, we'll stay with you for the next question, actually. This is one of a really important question. Responsible sourcing. Are your customers asking for sustainable textiles? And how easy is it to source and hold stocks of those fabrics?
Well, I think that this is the topic of the year, as we have seen in the last 12 months, that was already happening with the big brands. They were big pushing and this, but I think that all this situation has helped in a good way, and we are very happy to it that people start to think about it, and really now it's a movement of sustainability. I think that is going to be is the future. What we can see from our site is that 2025 starts to be a number. Don't ask me why, but it's like what we have been hearing for many brands, that they have the target on 2025 to become sustainable. And then when you have several brands that they are telling you the same number, is because they have it in their targets. They have to achieve. Today is good because they have it in their strategy, in their mission, and in their board meetings. The thing is that the industry, you realize that is not prepared 100% for it. So there are brands that they are doing very well, but the problem is that when you start to source, if today people want to move 100% from normal to sustainable fabrics, organic or whatever is or recycle, whatever is cotton or polyester, or doesn't matter what is the fiber, there is no enough sourcing to cover the demand to switch all of it to sustainable. But we see this, and we are very happy that this continues, and we promote it, and we are adapting our collection. Actually, we are not as fast as the market, but I think that is a very good movement that I think that must be the future.
Definitely. It's so interesting, isn't it? And it's also true too, I guess, Alex, that, obviously you're buying a huge buyer in this marketplace for textiles. And I think from some of my experience talking to other people too, people further down that supply chain, the smaller manufacturers are really struggling to get hold of responsibly sourced fabrics, whether they are rPET polyesters, organic cottons, or, organically bleached cottons. It's a real supply chain issue, and I think the textile industry has been doing an awful lot to get ready and prepared for this, but they kind of got caught out a little bit because the agenda's rolled forward so much because of the COVID pandemic. So it's good to hear that we are moving forward. Roberto,
Yes.
Could I ask you the same question, please? How are you doing trying to source sustainable fabrics?
Yes. After the lockdown, the demand in sustainable workings was increased, absolutely. Even though we developed these workings since a long time, the demand was increased after the lockdown. And we received every day many sustainable fabric to be printed in these new workings. But we don't know if the market is ready to satisfy the demand, because each brand is focused on this aspect, and we don't know if there is enough material to satisfy the demand.
Absolutely, and it's a huge problem because when you're putting fabrics into stock, your customers are sampling on them, and then they will order and want to order one after the next. So it's so important that you have absolute continuity of supply. Let's switch over to Kevin. Could you answer the same question?
Yeah, so our company again pushes for using recycled materials in sportswear. There is a very big demand for it. We see also many startups in athleisure coming to us and telling us the only thing they want is using recycled materials. At the moment, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have problems getting our fabrics from Italian suppliers such as Carvico, Miti, and Citip, which I've been working with for more than 10 years. And they know our company pushes on recycled materials, and maybe we get priority, I don't know. But so far, we didn't struggle getting our fabrics on stock on time.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Kirby, we've just got a couple of minutes left, actually. Would you like to or perhaps close on this topic? Because I'm sure it's going to be a big part of your new company's future too.
If I can roll my answer into the next question as well, I'd love to. So I couldn't agree more with Alex.
Just over 2 minutes.
We are watching this closely and getting huge demand for it. I've watched the book industry try and greenwash everything. And I do warn people in this industry that we've got to be careful that they're not just checking the box, that these firms that are certifying that it's organic, et cetera, have got to be held to a higher standard than anything we've ever seen before. So
they most definitely do. Greenwashing is a huge issue, definitely. Let's roll quickly to that next question then. Kevin, would you like to make any comments on that?
I think many of the brands, and I'm not speaking about the brands we work with, but even this morning read an article that brands like Zara are saying that they are so sustainable and helping the planet to be better by using recycled materials. But in fact, the percentage of recycled materials they use is so small that they don't make a change. So there are brands we work with that we use only sustainable materials. So I think it depends on the size of the brand also and how profit focused they are. I think many of the small brands we work with, they're happy they can start selling at leisure, but we are talking about 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 pieces per year. So it's very small, but I'm glad that things are moving in the right direction. And it would be nice that the big companies such as Volkswagen, Zara, and so on are doing more efforts and not just claiming they are sustainable, but actually doing something about it.
It's very interesting, isn't it? It's also interesting when you look at companies like Zara, H&M, etc., and how their labeling online is changing and how much more transparent they're being about the products that they're selling online. I mean, it's actually so interesting to see the detail that's there throughout the supply chain. Very interesting. Alex, would you like to add anything on that topic?
Well, from my side, I agree with what was your question, that in terms of regulation, I think that I agree with Kevin and Kirby that people is using nowadays it's becoming a marketing, and then we just need to make sure, or the industry needs to make sure that it's not only a marketing, that there's regulation and that all certifications are given for people that really makes sense and really needs to be in a mission and vision.
That's great. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're literally almost out of time, and we're done. Thank you so much for all of your time today. I really appreciate it. You're all so busy. Thank you, and thank you to our guests for taking the time to watch. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Pleasure.
Thank you for the
Bye-bye.
time.
bye.
Bye.